Welcome to lesson 1 of our drawing class. So today we're going to talk about what a line is and what types of lines there are. So let's talk about what is a line. A line is a mark that connects to other marks. What's a mark? A mark is this. So therefore a line is a mark that connects those marks. Kind of like a dot to dot. So now that we know what a line is, what are the types of lines? So lines can be straight, which means that they can just go straight across. And going straight, they can be horizontal, which means this way, or vertical, which is up and down. So they can be straight, vertical, or horizontal, or straight, vertical. Lines can also be curvy, and they can be horizontal or vertical as well. So that's two types of lines. So lines can be straight, horizontal, or vertical. Lines can be curvy, horizontal, or vertical. Lines can also be thick, which would be something like this, or thin, which would just be a thin line. And these can be horizontal or vertical as well. And thick and thin lines could be thick, thin. Thick and thin lines can be straight or they can be curvy. You can also have any combination in between these. So you can have a really, really thick line, then you can have a little bit thicker line, and then you can have a super, super thin, barely visible line. So that's other types of lines. They can be straight, curvy, thick or thin, and they can go horizontally or vertically. Lines can also be dotted. So they can also be dotted, which is like a broken line. So there's a dotted line. Now a dotted line can be really thick or really, really thin. You can also have dotted lines that are kind of wavy. And those lines could also be dotted or broken or thin. So you can also have thin, broken, or dotted lines, curvy lines. So now that we've kind of talked about the different types of lines, we can talk about lines that make shapes, because lines also are used to form shapes. So shapes can change direction and create new lines. So you can have like zigzag lines, which would change shapes, but they can also connect to make triangles, squares, circles, stars. So we have thick, thin, straight, curvy, diagonal, horizontal, dotted, and we have any combination of any of all of those. And then we have lines that make shapes. So these shapes could also be thick. So you could have a thick lined circle and a thin lined circle. So they can also be thick or thin. A really thick line square, and a really thin line square. And then the outside one would be a medium thickness. So that's all the different types of lines. And in talking about how lines can be thick or thin, that also means that there is something called line weight. So line weight is how thick or thin a line is. And I'm writing way too far over there. So line weight would be thin to thick lines. And that's a very thin, light line. And this is a very thick, noticeable line. So that's a light line weight, and this is a heavy line weight. So lines can be in all combinations of these, because you can have curvy lines that go from thin to really thick as well. So when you use line weight, you are creating kind of an illusion, and it creates depth. So that could be like, this could be the front of something going back to the horizon, which the horizon line is where the sky and the land or the ocean meet. So that would be your horizon line, and then these could be roads, and this would be the first road closest to you. Maybe you're looking at the ocean, and these could be waves. So this would be the closest wave to you. It would look thick. And then this line would be so far away, because that's where the waves are, it would be thin. So line weight creates a sense of depth, a sense of dimension, and perspective. Line weight will be used in several of our other drawings that we do later on as well. We also can use lines to create patterns. So this is kind of the start of a pattern, but we can do vertical lines, and we could do a thin, thick, thin, thick, thin, thick. So that would be a pattern that we would create with lines. You could do the same thing with dotted, straight, dotted, solid, or curvy, straight, curvy, straight. And those could be any line weight, because you could start out with a thin line weight, thick line weight, go to more of a medium line weight, maybe, come back to a thin line weight, a medium line weight, and then a thick line weight again. So we can use lines and line weights and the different types of lines to create a variety of patterns in our artwork. We can also use shapes to create patterns. So using shapes to create patterns, we could do square, triangle, circle, square, triangle, circle. Now this is also a heavy line weight, thin, thin, heavy line weight, thin, thin. So by changing the darkness, the thickness, or the lightness of our line, we can create a pattern. And we can create shapes and patterns. The use of line in art is very, very important. So for our first activity, we are going to practice using the different types of lines that I just showed you. We're going to practice using thin and thick lines, straight and curvy lines, diagonal lines, horizontal lines, vertical lines, diagonal lines. I like that. And we're going to practice doing line weight, and then we will move on to the next activity, which will then you will finish the rest of the week to turn in as your final project. So for our first project, to practice line weight and the different types of lines, we are going to, you need a piece of paper, a ruler, and a black marker. Just any color marker is fine, or ink pen. I use marker because it's easier to see, and my lines are easier to make thin and thick with a broad tip marker. So what you're going to do is you're going to divide your paper into 6 equal sections. So on my paper measures 12 inches. So if I divide 12 by 3, that equals 4. So every 4 inches at the top of my paper, I am going to put a line, just a little mark right at the top of my paper. And then I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. So I'm going to measure this piece of paper, and I'm going to put a little mark at the 4 and at the 8 on my ruler. Now I'm going to divide my paper this way, connecting this dot up here to the one below. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side, connecting those 2 dots. So now I have 3 equal spaces on my paper. Now to get 6, we're going to divide it in half this way. So my paper this way is 9 inches. Half of 9 is 4.5. So I'm going to find my 4, and I'm going to come into my half. I'm going to put a mark right there at 4.5. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of my paper, do a 4.5 mark. Okay. So now I'm going to connect those 2 lines. Now I have 6 equal spaces. So for this project, you are going to fill in each of these spots with different types of lines and different patterns, different line weight, thick, thin, curvy, straight. You can do vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and so this is just practice. So I'm going to start in this one, and I'm going to start with dotted or mark making first. So this one I'm just going to start making marks, because the first part of line is a mark. Just making marks. And you can use multiple colors if you want. This is just kind of fun and relaxing, actually, just making marks all over your... So that's our first square. First square is just the start of lines, marks. Our second one, we are going to do practice just making the different types of lines. So we can do a straight vertical line. Then I'm going to do a curvy vertical line. And those are a thin to medium line weight, probably closer to the thin side. And then I'm going to make a dotted line, a straight dotted line. Then I'm going to make a curvy dotted line. So see, it's like a curvy line with just broken pieces in it. So that's just our main practice right there. We've done basically the different types of lines. Now on the next one, we're going to create our first pattern. You can create this pattern however you want. You can do curvy straight, thick thin, dotted straight. You can even change the pattern of your dotted line. So instead of just doing dots almost equally, you could do a long and then a small dot, and then a longer line and then a small dot. So you could do a line like that. And then you can follow it with a straight line. So we're going to just create a pattern using straight lines in this square. I think I said you can use any one, but this one is just straight. So some kind of pattern with straight lines. So I'm going to do dotted, thin, thick, and then another dotted line. That's going to be my pattern, and I got messed up just a little bit, but that's okay. If you mess up, no big deal. This is just practice. And then a thin line, and then another thick straight line. So that's my third square. And then in the next one, we're going to use curvy lines. So we'll do curvy, thin, thick, curvy dotted lines and make a pattern in this square. And you can do them horizontally or diagonally, or you could do them vertically again. That part is up to you, but just use curvy lines only in this one. And my curvy lines now are even changing line weight in the middle of them. So this part is thick and this part is thin. Lines can do that too. I know I didn't mention that before, but especially when you're doing curvy lines, they can change line weight in the middle of your line. So we're creating our pattern. And you can do dots in here too if you want, dotted curvy lines. Okay. So then the next one here, we're going to practice making line weight from thin to thick and then thick to thin. So what we're going to do, it's going to be straight lines, and we're going to take our ruler and right in the middle at a diagonal, we're going to make a thick line right in the middle. And you can go over that one a couple times just to make it nice and thick, to give us room to make our lines thinner on both sides. Okay, so there's my pretty thick diagonal line in the middle. Now we're going to come to the top and we're going to make a thinner line than that one. And you might have to kind of move your ruler a little bit and maybe go over it, a couple times, maybe one more time, because that's not quite the right thickness to be the next in line. Okay. So really thick, it's getting thinner. And then we're going to go right above that one and keeping our diagonal, trying to stay about the same distance, and make your next line. This one is going to be thinner than this one, so you might not need to trace it 4 times, maybe only 3 times. So then this is the thickest, comes down a little thinner, a little bit more, and then we're going to do it again. And maybe just this one will do too. Maybe we'll do another one because that's not quite, just a little bit. Okay. And then we'll move up more and we'll do just 2 this time. We won't move it just a little bit more, this one. And now we'll just do one. And now we'll come and do just the tip, very, very tip, just to make it a nice thin line. Let's see if we can get one more really super light thin line in there. So there's our practicing line weight on that half of our square. So now we're going to do it on the other side, and we're going to go make this size line on this side. So just move your ruler down a little. Try to keep them parallel. Parallel lines mean that they never cross. They run exactly beside each other forever. They never cross. And this is a little hard on the board for me. You guys do the best that you can. And then I'm going to come down and do that another line. Make this one thinner than the one before. And add just a little bit more to that one. Not a lot, just a little. And then keep going down. Each one of them is going to be a little bit thinner than the one before. So now we've practiced line weight with straight lines, straight diagonal lines. In this one, we're going to use curvy lines. So with this one, you can start your thick curvy line up here. You could start your thick curvy line here. You could do it here and go that way. But what we're going to do, I'm going to come down this way with mine. So I'm going to make a thick curvy line, and that's not quite thick enough, so I'm going to go over it again. And see, that's okay when we're adding an extra line on top. We're just thickening our line. So there's a nice thick line at the top of my paper. Curvy line. So my next one, move it down a little, and this one I'm not going to make as thick. And I'm going to come down again, and I'm not going to make this one as thick. And then this one I'm just going to do one, and then I'm going to go to the side of my marker. So now we've practiced making different types of marks and lines, and we've practiced patterns, and we have practiced with line weight. So these are the main this is the main concepts of drawing with lines. Using lines in different ways like this is what all artists use to create their artwork. Any combination of these. Now for your final project that will be due on Sunday, you are going to take another piece of paper. I'm trying to get my example out. And you're going to divide it into 6 equal squares just like this. So if you have, like I did, 9 by 12, they would be 4 inches across, and then it's 9 this way, so it's 4.5 by 4-inch squares. If you need help dividing them, you can ask me and I'll tell you the measurements if you want to. If you need another little lesson on how to actually measure if you're not sure, I can help you with that too. So the next project, you're going to divide your paper into 6 spaces again, and in each one you are going to put your first initial. And you can do them all bubble shapes, or you can do them more boxy, or you can create a pattern like I did. So if you notice, in this one I used just marks, and in this one I used curvy, straight, and dotted lines. And I created a pattern. And in this one, I created a pattern as well. So see, I did patterns in each one of these, all different. And I want you to take your time with these. Don't rush them like we did this one because this was just practice. Take your time. Make these neat. You can use shapes. You can use different colors, but 6 different squares. And these will be, you'll take your final pictures of these for Sunday. And these, I would like to see these by Tuesday. And then your discussion question for this week is, explain in your words how using line weight and patterns can create an optical illusion. So an optical illusion is referring to your eyes, because optical means eyes and how we see. An illusion is how something tricks your brain through your eyes. So if you notice here, our lines are getting thinner and it looks like it's moving away. And here it looks like, you know, that's in a hole maybe. Like if we're standing right here, that's moving down into a hole maybe. It depends on how you see it and how you look at it. So I will write your discussion question and post it sometime probably on Monday, and then you can post your pictures of the assignment that we did today by Tuesday, and then take time and work on this one. Try to make sure your lines are evenly spaced, make sure these are nice and neat, but take time. Be creative, have fun with this one. This one is going to be posted on Sunday, and I'll post that. So I look forward to our next lesson. Work hard this week. If you have any questions, send me a message and I will help you out. And I will be looking for and commenting on your posts and your discussion question comment as well. So thank you for joining me today. See you next time.